to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll begin. The first item on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone here wishing to speak this evening? No? You don't have anything? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go right into old business. We're here this evening to talk about where we stand with regard to the 2010-2011, the budget. And I'll turn it over to the chief.
At this point, the information we have from the finance director is that looks like the Wainwright, the budget committee cut $350,799 from the council's recommended budget.
That's correct.
So at this point, the commissioners wanted to have a discussion about whether to take a position or not, what the pleasure would be for Thursday night's public hearing and, I believe, final vote of the budget committee on the budget. What you have is what Christine sent us is a copy letter, a cover letter, just so you know, so you're on the same page. And then you have what the budget summary is. The column on the far right, column number 10, is what the budget committee recommended. Column 9 is what the council recommended. So you can see the comparison there. And then on the bottom left of that first page and the top left of the second page is a breakdown, account by account, by
Where they cut.
So that's where we're at this point.
I was at the budget committee on Thursday to listen to both the discussion and to answer any questions.
Okay.
So, what is your pleasure? There were a couple of things, however, that I didn't quite understand. There was some discussion about how they arrived at the wage line, and I was straining to kind of understand exactly how they were going about that. And if you go back and look at the minutes, I guess it was based on the fact that they were looking at the 31st week of 52 weeks, and that gave them a percentage, but I didn't come out with that percentage, based on the amount spent thus far, and they got a percentage of what they think we're going to spend for this year's budget. And again, I didn't come out with that same figure. But that's where the discussion centered around, and that's what they made.
What they feel we're going to spend on that line?
What they think the line, how it's going to be expended based on what we spent thus far, on the experience of what we spent thus far. And that's what they were basing it on. And then they calculated that based on the request and came out with the figure, and then they made the cut from there.
I guess it goes back to the old adage, if you don't use it, you can't have it again.
Well, like I say, that's what, that's how they arrived at it.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of the discussion was, I believe they've done some research on, I think it was Goffstown, and the number of people in their command staff, and they gave a figure for that. But today when I called, I didn't get the same figure, and maybe we were talking about two different things. I didn't get the same. In fact, I asked, I spoke to a gal by the name of Denise Roberge, and I asked her, you know, to explain to me a little bit about the command staff and whatnot. And I think it was said that they only had one, but she said no, they have two. I guess, you know, so.
If you remember during
Captains.
if you remember during your discussion on the pay equity issue, a survey was given to you of other departments that we looked at. So,
Well, that was the question. That was the question. Had we been able to have a meeting beforehand, what did we want to do with regard to the pay equity adjustments? And I wanted to have a discussion about that. And as I said, we've also received a letter from the town council requesting that we suspend them. And I think we need to decide one way or the other how we're going to go about that.
if I could, the first thing on your agenda was, so you don't mix and match stuff, was to discuss, if I can, from the question was, what, if anything, position does the commission want to take as far as the current status of the budget?
Right. Right.
I think the second issue on your agenda was the request by the council.
Okay.
The
Okay.
status of the budget,
Sure. Go ahead.
first of all, you have to go after it to get it put back up. This just doesn't show a $350,799 cut. We had already cut $300,000 out of that budget. Some of it by absorbing the benefits line, which we never had. We took $100,000 out of overtime to begin with before this budget was ever presented.
Mm-hmm.
We had eliminated 2 vehicles before this was ever presented.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm not mistaken, this accounts for a $650,000 cut year over year.
From full staff of 29, which was approved by the people in 2004.
Correct, but I'm saying budget to budget, this comes out to, it should be around $650,000, give or take. I don't have a calculator right in front of me.
No, I have a calculator. Let's start with some of the things, though, that we do agree on, because apparently there were some things that, some statements that were, good evening.
Good evening.
There were some statements that were being made, and I guess in talking to the chief, that the chief is okay with some of those, and one of them being the, to purchase a cruiser, okay? So that one, you had already agreed upon that we could live without it.
I think if you look at if you look at what Christine provided us, the areas that stand out to me that are going to be issues for the commission to decide about sooner or later are going to be the legal for union negotiations. If you're not going to, because that line was, I believe, zeroed out.
But that was zeroed out before it even got to the budget committee.
Right, but at some point down the road in next year's budget, regardless of what the line is, the commission's going to have to decide if you're going to use legal for negotiations. The other areas, 2 other areas, the vehicle and some of the other areas that were reduced, those will just absorb and things will get cut back. But the main concern is the overtime was cut by almost by half of what we took to the council.
97, yeah.
And then the wages by $212,000. So I tried to do some math, and I came up with, we're still talking anywhere between 3 to 4 positions, full-time officer positions, that could not be funded with the current bottom line that we're at right now.
Well, I think we all, do we or do we not agree about the vehicle? Since you had already made the statement that the vehicle, I mean, we can't fight about it if that's the fact that that's what was said to them, that it was okay to take the vehicle out.
I guess if I can say...
And same thing with the canine.
Right. I guess I would say that the only issues I would be concerned about is the union negotiations and the wages and the overtime. The other items, I wouldn't be concerned about as far as putting money back in, but you're talking the union issue. We discussed whether that's important or not to have proper legal advice while that process is going on. And we're talking about basically 3 or 4 positions that we would not fill. Fortunately, right now, today, they're not filled, so we wouldn't be laying anybody off, but we'd be heading into the new year with 3 to 4 positions, basically where we're at right now, if you will. However, with that much less overtime, with basically a third of the overtime we have available now, more or less, even if it's only half, and we're filling shifts to keep the minimum meeting out there with overtime. So it's up to you, obviously, but I think those are the 3 lines that would concern me as far as our ability to operate next year.
Well, let's talk about, first of all, the union negotiations, okay? What I learned from the town council was that not everyone uses the services of an attorney to do a negotiation. I'm not saying we need to or we don't. I guess my next question would be with regard to the legal line, the other legal line, not the negotiations line, but the other legal line. Do you feel that there's any dollars out of that line that can be used for negotiations?
That's totally up to you people. That's totally up to you as far as whether you want to use any legal for union, and if you do, to what extent. I suppose you could look at it that way and say that you're not going to use legal for the negotiations process, but just to review the final contract, if you will. And I suppose that would come out of the regular legal line.
Right.
Depends on how good of a job you do. If the attorney looks at it and says we made a mess of it, then that's going to be different than if the attorney looks at it on the final review and says you did an okay job at it. So, but that is.
But that was the gist of the conversation, I believe, when we went to the town council, if I recall. I guess, Dave, you have more of an experience with regard to the negotiations line, although, you know, do we have a cost of what this go-round of negotiations? That would be a figure that would be interesting. That's why I'm asking. Okay, that would be helpful to know that. Okay, so perhaps that's not a decision that we can make right now. Okay, let's move on, since we need more information with regard to that particular line. Then the next one is the overtime line. And that line was cut, I believe, $97,000.
How come we don't have any actuals for the other day?
Well, that one there, because it always used to be included in the wage line, and then all of a sudden I gather from looking at
is that one of the ones we separated?
Right.
Didn't have any estimates?
So there isn't.
Yeah, I actually got that upstairs if you want to go get it.
Please do, please do.
The numbers we gave at the town council are overtime history as far as actual expenditure. The 2005-2006 budget year, we spent $231,163 actual.
What was that again? I apologize.
231,163.
That's for 05-06.
Yeah. 06-07. 607 at the end of the year. We had spent in overtime 242,625.
Okay,
7/8, actual spent overtime 270,379. And 2008, 2009, we spent 208,756.
where are we now? Do you-
I don't have that because I think Frankie's working on it right now.
A little over 200,000.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep,
that's a big hit.
that's a big hit. Do you happen to have the minutes, those minutes that she sent over,
From which minutes?
the budget committee minutes?
No, I don't know.
I guess I was looking to find out what that
Oh,
97,964 represented. Okay. That is a substantial. Well, let's go to the regular wage line, and that cut, I believe, is $212,870. It's on the page following it there. Okay, and I believe the way it worked out was that this was based on, I think it, was it 24, 25 officers at 70,000? Is that the way it was?
The wages you have to go back after. In education, that's contractual, correct?
Yeah, and I
So whether
did
we have
say,
that 4,500 or not, it has to be paid for if it is used. If it is
Up to
used.
that, right, whatever that dollar, the way the contract is, whatever is that dollar amount, we can only spend up to that.
The only benefit you can have going there is there's no contract. Correct?
Right, but I think most of the provisions don't carry over.
Okay, that's my question. Vehicle-related purchases, this gives us 0 vehicles. And while we're on the subject of vehicles, and the transport ban, such a big question, the reason why I personally started the research on the transport ban is because Mr. Booton was the one who said the Hooksett Courthouse is being crossed off, which meant it was going to be closed.
where are you getting that information?
Right here. You get this?
Well, I probably do, but I'm trying to look, oh, okay, is that,
If you go through the packet that I gave you,
I didn't
the
look
history
at
would
that.
add up. And
That's how it all
that's what I gave you. Started with an article in the Union Leader, February 13, 2009, about the governor's plan would close 8 district courts.
Yeah.
It went to a discussion here about the general idea. It went to Mr. Booton on March 11, 2009, making a
I
report
see it.
to the council. Paul, you actually had a discussion back and forth. March 14th, 09, Union Leader article, titled Hooksett Court Still Could Be Closed. At the same time, shortly after that, April 21st, 2009, there was a discussion held at this meeting about the court and the possibilities, and Commissioner Gagnon had asked that, actually stated he would do some research with the Laconia Police Department to see about how they use their van. Went further that there was discussion at subsequent meetings in May about looking at doing at the van, and then going further where it was decided. One thing that I didn't find in the minutes, what I know we discussed, was the information that Dave brought back from Laconia, was that sergeants drive that as their primary vehicle in Laconia. They go to the calls, that you weren't
Wait a
able to
minute, I can't keep up with this. I thought we were talking about the courthouse, how do we get to the,
That's how we got the transport vehicles,
Right.
by the courthouse being said it was going to be closed. We needed a vehicle to transport prisoners to Concord.
when the
So we
discussion.
didn't have to use 2 or 3 cruisers and 2 or 3 people.
So the discussion was based on what the state was, what we.
But
were
whose
basing-
information were we basing it on? And I guess that's the discussion that
Mr.
came up.
Booton was the House representative at the time.
And I believe Mr. Hess got up and said the other night that in no way was it ever stated, and I guess it's been back and, from what I can see now, is that it's been back and forth, and in fact, at the bottom, it says, I'm not inferring anything, I'm simply stating that the Hooksett District Court is lined out.
Correct.
But when you, before you were on the commission, during the discussion of whether, of the commission saying, look into a vehicle, Mr. Gagnon did some looking into some research with Laconia and how they use theirs. As time went on, we didn't know exactly what would happen in the court, but the discussion was that even if the court stayed open, that as Laconia does with their supervisors, that may very well be a good idea for us to do. So whether the court ultimately, whether the court was going to stay open or closed, was still up in the air, but whether it did or not, that it made sense for us to mirror how Laconia uses their van with their patrol sergeants and to do the same. So the
So it wasn't solely on
Not solely.
the premise
No.
of the court
No, the
closing?
information that Mr. Hess has is not complete.
It started
With the
not
discussion
complete.
of that vehicle, and then it went further into when Mr. Gagnon did his research, what does Laconia use theirs? Because if you go to Laconia, you see sergeants driving the van around. Based on that information, we had 2 issues, if you will. Number one, what would happen if the court closed and we had to take prisoners to Concord on court days when we have them sitting here, and what do other communities do? When the court issue was never resolved 100%, we didn't know what would happen in the budget process. In the discussions, however, of how Laconia uses it, seemed like that was a good idea because it solved the number of issues that we had here, and we wouldn't be doing something that is unheard of, to have a sergeant as a single occupant driving that vehicle, going to the scene of arrest, helping officers, forces the sergeants to go to the scene of arrest, bring the prisoners back, forces them to be there like they're supposed to be supervising anyway. So when the court issue, one way or the other, didn't pan out one way or the other, we didn't know. We still looked at the operational issue of would the van be good for us to use, and that was the primary driving force of the purchase. If the court closed, that would be just an extra that the vehicle would be useful for. If it didn't, it would still be useful for that primary operational purpose.
Now, was there an obligation to go back to either the council or the budget committee, the fact that you were purchasing that? Is that what the...
Why?
No, I'm just asking the question. I'm just asking.
You know, I think a lot's been made out of this vehicle because it's something different. But the vehicle has a purpose and a use and was in the vehicle, coming in under vehicle purchases. I don't see anybody in an uproar because we bought our first ambulance after town warrant said no ambulance. We went out and bought an ambulance. Now we have a second ambulance that nobody's ever voted for, but that's okay. This vehicle is not something that's going to sit out in the parking lot. At least it better not. It's got a purpose. It's got a great purpose,
Yeah.
twofold, if something happens to the courthouse. And I don't think any of us know whether that is going to stay open or close. Hopefully it does stay open and it never is needed. But at this point, it had other issues to it after investigating what Laconia does with it. And that's was a big part of it, not just the transport.
Okay. I'm going to, if it's okay, Mr. Loisel has raised his hand.
Just with regard to that, the minutes of 3/11, okay, where David, I questioned David Booton about, that the courthouse was going to be closed, not going to be closed, and it was on again, off again. And his response, you started answering, reading his response, okay, but you didn't complete it. And I just think that if you're going to read his paragraph, you should complete it, because it basically states that, and that's what, towards the bottom, it says, now we know the governor said that he's changed his position on that. Okay, so the last
But
statement
again,
is pretty much...
it's in here.
But you
Yeah.
want to read the whole thing, Paul, and it says, that the governor has changed his position, but it is still lined out on
Yeah,
paper.
it's still lined out, but
And,
his position has
but
changed after it's
again,
been
but
lined out.
again, it's in there. That's the whole paragraph. So it's kind of, it is, but it isn't. It might be, and it could be.
Right, so
So-
there was no absolute one way or
No,
the
no,
other.
no, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying there ever was, but that started everything.
Yeah.
You know, plus what was in the paper and everything else, that
Mm-hmm.
started the whole thing, because I guess it's still lined out.
Yeah.
That, you know, that shows that there could be something.
We never know.
We don't.
I
and we
guess
still
what
don't,
I'm
and we
hearing
still don't
is
know.
that even in spite of that, the commission took the position that whether or not it was in or out the courthouse, that they were looking at that vehicle, that it was a vehicle that they felt they needed.
Supervisory use vehicle, correct.
Okay. And now at some point we'll have to find out how we're supposed to deal with an issue like that. Okay.
All right, next question, police equipment. Is that the line for vest and stuff like that, or is it something else?
Police equipment, 713.
Steve?
Well, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm not sure.
Well, it's our police equipment line. It's, you know,
Well, it covered many, many,
424-01-713.
was the K-9.
Well, the K-9 came out of there right away because
There is a
it was said that we had agreed. So much for that. So much for that.
I thought you guys bought that.
I did.
Listen, I know you did.
I think the big thing there would have been the K-9, so that would.
Well, the
that's why-
K-9
that's
came
why-
out because
That's why I'm saying that.
they-
That's the thing I'm not worried about. Operationally, I'm not worried about that line. The only lines I'm worried about
But why would that
operationally.
be under personnel equipment, not police equipment?
Why would it be under personnel?
Personal equipment.
Well, the cop was in the 713 police equipment. That's where the dog was.
Okay, the dog was there, and that's the
Yeah,
only
because
thing that, so that's like 11,000 plus. That was just the dog?
they took out the whole thing that went with the K-9. The dog food, the bills and the boarding, all that stuff. They took out everything that went with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
which leaves us no chance.
Well, I believe the chief you were in agreement with the K-9, were you not?
Right, I think myself and the staff still felt that for the next year.
Because he said to
that
him
we
that it
weren't
was
in
okay.
favor of a K-9 in the next year during our initial budget process. That's why I'm saying that when you look at the cuts that were made, the only ones that cause me concern is the legal for union negotiations and the overtime and the wages.
Still leaves another $3,000 that wasn't covered in the K-9.
But he already agreed that the K-9 shouldn't.
No, I understand that, but the total they cut off still leaves another $3,000 on top of that. There's $3,000 worth of other cuts in any of this.
Well, I think the other, what was the other one, the other part of this that was cut?
Flashlight batteries,
No, it wasn't
Blankets.
flashlight, no, it wasn't blankets. I'd have to go back to the minutes.
it doesn't really matter the particulars. But you need to know where you want to take it from.
Right.
All right, that's my only questions.
Well, like I said earlier, I think it would be a good idea for us to put together where we stand right now as far as wages and benefit and what those costs are, and what we feel the overtime is going to be as a result of having less officers and having to fill in, so that we have something, some kind of a picture, you know, at this point in time, to determine what our costs are.
So
They,
you can guess that much in the future.
no, I'm saying today, what it
No.
is today, what it is today. At the complement that we have today,
What's
Which
costing
is-
us for overtime?
what it's costing us for
We'll
overtime.
have to get that, you know,
Okay.
Francine do that.
And we're at a complement of what?
23.
23, okay? And we're in the process of, we have one at the academy right now?
One's in the academy.
One's in the academy,
That's part of your compliment.
and, which is part of your complement because you're paying them, okay? And we're in the process of hiring,
Hiring, how?
well,
Well-
we're interviewing.
We've interviewed and we will start some of the basic paperwork, but I won't start spending money on testing. If there's not going to be positions open, we're not going to spend taxpayer money to run people through a process when there's no positions going to be available for them on July 1st. Because you'll be hiring them in July, May or June and laying them off June 30th.
Well, I guess that's where I'm at I have a lot of difficulty because is it our expectation that we want to bring the complement to the 27,
29, actually,
pardon me?
to 29, actually.
Well, we have funding, we had
Well,
funding
the
for
budget,
25.
let me put it this
For
way.
27.
The budget that was submitted, the commission's budget submitted to the council, and what the council did approve, allowed for 27 officers. Okay, with the cuts that have been made to the wages, there's no way you're going to fund 27 officers. You're not going to make up that much money out of the other operating lines and still be able to function.
But I guess my question is it the intention of this department that we should have 27 officers and that's what we need for protection of this community?
That's what the
Okay.
commission said by the budget that was sent forward to the budget committee. I put in a budget request for 29, and we cut it to 27, so we could stay within the budget, the council's request to be level funded. And 27, so we put in the budget that you people sent forward was for 27.
But now, what you're saying to me this evening is, based on these cuts, that we would only be able to fund how many?
Just looking at it roughly, and again, roughly, it looks like we'd be able to either stick at 23 or maybe go to 24. It depends on, at this point in time, because it depends at the next level how it shakes out. If more money gets cut, that number won't be valid. If money gets added back in, that number won't be valid. So that's, looking at these numbers very roughly tonight, as we sit here, we'd be either staying at 23, maybe going to 24.
Okay, now here's the difficult question. Could we, if we took out the merit pool, the pay adjustments, and the other increases in wages, could we afford any more officers?
The wage adjustments, if I remember right, for 12 months was around $26,000. A little over
26
26.
and change.
Okay.
So
And what about the merit?
the merit, the 2% pool, I don't have that with me. It was 2%.
That we have to add in.
Then benefits is X number per person, which is, I don't have that in front of me, but remember the benefits for, you figure somebody at a family level, because then they have,
You have to figure family level.
right, so you figure at least, was it 8,000, I think it was roughly,
That'd be pretty close.
per person for benefits, so.
Per person, but for a family, it's much more.
No, I think you need for a family.
For a family, it's more than that, it's 13.
Is it?
Is it?
I think I saw that someplace. I see so many things there, I think I see things when I don't see things, when they're not there.
Could be right.
Okay, here's this sheet. There, I got two of them. I got one that's called Christine's and the other one is
For
mine.
benefits?
Yeah, and health insurance for a family, I believe, is $19,652. The town share is $17,652. 687.
Well, if you look in, just so you know, if you look in the numbers that Christine gave us from the budget committee discussion the other night, they didn't cut any of the benefit lines. So you would still have, so the benefit lines weren't cut.
Just so,
So the benefit lines that are
Yeah, but
still here
the
support
line
27 people.
is still irrelevant, Steve. I mean,
well, it
can't-
is and it isn't
No,
because...
no, the bottom line is still what's relevant. You have to be able to fund everything that's going on off the bottom line. I understand what you're saying, the benefits are still in there, but
Don't you-
something's gone.
But don't you have an agreement with the council?
Right,
If
we
you're
will.
not to
On
expend
the benefits, I
benefits, if you
understand.
don't spend the benefits,
I
you have
understand
to
that.
return the
But
benefits.
even if you don't figure in the benefits, you're still looking at almost $40,000
Right.
for a walk-in, not even out of college, because that would boost that.
Bottom line is, you're going to be at least from the 27 that our current staffing that we asked for, you're going to be 2 to possibly 4 officers, probably 2 to 3 lower in staffing with these numbers currently as they are than we are in the current budget we're in.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, with what she just asked for the calculations of those figures, whatever they add up to, but a baseline officer would be roughly $38,000.
Plus insurance.
Excuse me?
Right,
Plus
not counting benefits.
That's
Not counting benefits because you
benefits.
have it in the line.
Right,
If they didn't cut it out of that line,
right.
it's there and it sits.
So you don't even have enough for one?
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
And that's, if John eliminates anybody with experience, anybody with a college degree, to strictly come in baseline as a full-fledged rookie. Correct? That would be the baseline entry.
I think it's higher, I think it's in the low 40s.
Yeah.
The hiring of somebody,
I believe so, I believe that's the starting rate, uncertified is just over 40 something.
The new uniform cost.
no,
That doesn't even count that.
Yeah,
Didn't even
but-
count
We
that.
need to count that, we're just looking at salary right now.
When you go to the academy, you have 3
But not
hours a week
funded.
overtime built in for the academy. Academy's running 43 hours a week, so any person going to the academy gets 3 hours of overtime a week as well. So that bumps that up. for
That's
the,
why it was always
for
set at 43
12
before.
to 14 weeks at 43 hours. So 3 hours of overtime for 12 to 14 weeks.
So there we are with those. So we could not even fund to have, you said we could fund to the 24th, but we could not fund to the 25th?
We might be, even if we funded to the 25th, you might be able to, if you go back into some of these other lines and work them down from what you had proposed to the council.
Okay, what
And
lines
then-
are we talking about?
Well, you'd have to go back to every single line. You can't sit here tonight. What you'd have to do is you'd have to sit and say, if you want to have 25 people, this is what it's going to cost. And then work your way back down by cutting to see if you're down at the bottom line number. I guess my point is no matter which way you figure it, from the bottom up or going the other way, either way, you're still at the point that you're going to have at least 2 people, 2 positions less next year than the 27 that you asked for.
So
And if that's fine, that's fine.
so
as
we're
long
at
as
20, we're at 25.
We'd probably be close, like I said, 24, maybe the 25th. And that's the question. Do you stick with that? And as long as you explain to the citizens that come in and say that we were at 27 this year as far as funding and we were working to fill that, but now we're going to run with 25 next year, we can do it. We'll do the best we can. That's basically what it amounts to, though. So the question...
Well, 25 is not a guarantee. We should be able to do 24.
Right. that's
25,
what-
you have to find the holes.
Right, right.
I mean, you already have no cars, so we need a complete description of what these vehicles, what state they're in. We're not replacing anything. And from what I hear, a lot of these cars have over 100,000 miles on them now.
But we
No,
did
actually, we're in better shape.
shape than that.
We
You
can go
gave
another
us a
year with no
report the
problem.
last
Okay.
time.
Yeah, the last updated.
You've got educational that you have to fund
Right.
if somebody chooses to use it. That's the problem with that one,
Up to
because it's
whatever-
contractual.
Right, up to
Yeah,
whatever
and I
you
did
want.
explain that, I guess the feeling was that since no one availed themselves of it, they just didn't think that, you know, they should put it in.
I guess if I can, because you can figure this, you can spend all night figuring it
Yeah.
from many different ways. Bottom line is, the commission put in for 27 officers in the budget. The council left the budget even with the adjustments that they made at 27 officers. We're down to, with the current numbers, looking at them roughly, and again, not sitting figuring from many different angles, you're looking at being 2 to 3 officers down from that on a complement next year with this budget. Do you want to go in and ask, leave it as it is, or do you want, does the commission want to take the position that you'd like to ask for some money to be added back, to come back toward that complement? I think that's from my point of view, the bottom line question, because you can massage the numbers any way you want all day, but that's the bottom line number, the bottom line issue to me, as far as staff I'm going to have to put out there. And
If
get
you
the
don't-
overtime, because
If you don't ask for the money to be put back for the complement of officers, you already are never gonna cover overtime the way it sits. So even figuring going 24, 25, I think is a stretch, because you can't even cover the overtime with what's in there. Just on the average of $200,000 so far over the past 4 years, I think you gave
No,
us.
we'll be running shifts shorter than we are currently today, because now we're using overtime to fill those. When you have, what you said, and basically the number that's here is 3/4 of what our average of spent is.
And you need 5 officers to cover 24/7.
Right.
So even by putting 2 on, you're not chopping a whole heck of a lot off the overtime. Correct? You're not chopping off their salary, for sure.
No, but what we will do is, when we have openings, the openings that we now are filling with overtime, we won't be filling with overtime.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right, so you will definitely run, you will be short as far as your total complement, and you will be shorter on coverage of how much we have to pay to have people fill those gaps.
So do we want to look at this budget, at some of these lines, to see if there's something else different that we can do with these lines? Or do we simply want to, when we go to the deliberative session, to ask those that are there to see if they're interested? Because if you go through some of this backup information, and I'm not saying this is what I'm suggesting, I'm just looking at some of these lines. The gasoline, I don't know where it's going to be. That's not even something that I'd even want to talk about. But vehicle repairs, I guess I would suggest, and Paul, I don't want your eyes to fall out of your head, that we would ask the town to repair our
No.
vehicles. Well,
Been down that road before. They're not equipped for the cars. That was the issue, the reason why it got pulled out. This was actually ended up being cheaper, because they're used to trucks, and their mechanics were used to trucks.
I think Dale got a different input on that.
Well, then maybe it's time we bring it forward,
Yeah.
because when it happened, the only thing they were doing is
Sit down with
trucks.
Highway and discuss it, because I think they're capable of handling it.
They didn't have the computer that was capable of reading the cars.
That's not a big deal.
Maybe it's not a big deal. Either you have it or you don't.
Purchase the item.
Well, nobody
Well,
wanted
they
to
do have-
purchase it
they do
because there
have-
was $10,000 plus updates.
They do have a computer that reads.
They had a computer for the trucks.
For cars as well.
Okay, I mean, but that's never been brought forward. I mean, we'd all rather spend the money in-house.
but is this a conversation that we think we can at least explore?
Absolutely, if they're saying they're equipped now and they have a mechanic for cars. That was always the issue, Paul.
Yeah.
Um,
I knew there were issues, but, and I could never quite understand, especially on the fire side, when Chief Howard was here, the amount of money that was spent by sending the fire trucks to Maine for service, for just general service.
But there was issues. And then the issues were that the mechanics they ended up getting were diesel mechanics, and they really didn't want to work on the cars, and they kept getting pushed aside. and never really sent, and half the time they were sending them to Grapponi's, and we didn't even know about it, and the car would disappear for 3 days. So if it was gonna go there, we figured we'd take it ourselves and cut out the middle driver. If that's changed, and now they have the computer equipment, maybe it's something we should have Les look into, Steve? See if the highway garage is up to par, and if they are, I agree with Paul, maybe it's something.
It's something that the council's gonna have to go back to Carol and ask Highway, do they have the manpower to now take this much more work on? If they do, fine, I don't have a problem with it,
Not a
but,
hard question, either they can or they can't.
right, so,
Yeah.
actually, if you can get, I mean, because that's the first
I'll bring it
question.
up.
Yeah, that's the first question. I mean, that was the issue back then with Dale, was the lack of equipment to do the job properly, the lack of certification of the people that he had,
Yeah.
and the lack of manpower to take care of the total size of the fleet from all departments that they were being asked to maintain.
Yep. I shall ask the question,
Thank you, Paul.
okay?
Yeah, no, that's great.
I just wanted to give you a correct number on the
Oh,
the
okay.
higher range.
Okay.
It's 35 and change.
Mhm.
I think the number I was thinking of is when we added the other day, what the uniform cost is, the doctors and all that, and the overtime through the academy pushes it to around 40, 41, but.
For the first year.
range, First year is 35 and change
Okay,
for uncertified.
thanks.
Okay, I'm looking at some of these others.
I'll
I'm
get
not-
back to you tomorrow on this, by the way, okay?
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I don't know if there's a whole lot, I mean, some of these, you know these better than I do. They take out the calendars, I told you that before.
Huh?
I think we did everything.
Did they take out the calendars?
Yeah, we don't know what date it is. Those are,
They can take those out. I'll have to dispense with these two, too.
you're gonna have to dispense with some of the subscriptions.
The publications, yep, they're gonna have to go.
Do you want to get K-rations from the military instead of regular food?
For the prisoners?
Yeah. I don't think,
I don't know how much, but we have
I
to
think
start
that's a job
someplace.
for another day, but I still think we need to go and see about getting the money back to get compliment.
To get the complement to 27 or to get the complement to make sure that it's 25? What do you want?
I'd like to see it at 27 personally. How many people in the pipeline that haven't left because we failed them out right now?
Or we just did a whole new process, or we have,
Also, it's brand new.
yeah, we have one that's being polygraphed on Friday. He's finished, the polygraph's his last step,
Okay.
and we just did interviews 2 days last week all day. So those people will be in the beginning of the process, but we have probably more than a dozen to choose from.
Really?
Yeah.
But then the issue goes back to what the chief said. Do we get our complement back up to 27 when, if we only have money for 24,
I think you'd know though, because this part of the process takes a while, am I correct?
we'll know by then? What do you got, how many weeks before you think you'll have anything?
As far as,
Candidates.
How long would it take from now to get to the day we bring them in here, roughly?
we'll probably do it in as little as 2 months.
No. So it would be minimum of 2 months, probably a little bit on the outside of
I
that.
would say, yeah, because we rely on outside, psychological as an outside contractor. I don't set the date when he has an appointment.
No, and I understand that.
So given that, I would, if we pushed on the background end and.
But I'm not saying to push, I'm saying so that we have a complete answer.
It depends on how many you're looking at. I would say that to you.
Okay.
You can do one a lot quicker. You can do one in a month. If you're looking at 2 to 3, then you're gonna take longer. It's more checks you gotta do, it's more
But now-
references, more places you gotta go to, so.
But I guess the reason I'm asking, just so you know where I'm coming from, we would have an answer of what our budget would be by the time, we wouldn't hire somebody to say,
Before this vote
see you
goes,
later.
before this May vote.
We should be able to get this May vote in before,
It's the beginning of May. It's the beginning of May. It's that, I don't know, that.
that's 2 months from, roughly 2 months from today.
My thought would be, and what I said to the staff at the meeting this morning, and I told the captain, was to continue right now until we know what happens, until we see if anything changes this Thursday night
Correct.
with the paperwork part of the process. So we haven't slowed down that part of the process. If
But wait.
anything, and we could continue if it looks like there's some feeling on the part of the citizens who hopefully will come Thursday night and give their opinion one way or the other, then we would know to continue the process to wait and see in May what we finally end up with. And when we know what we finally end up with, then we can go back to all the lines like we always do anyway and look at what monies are going to go into what lines, then we will know how many officers we can field.
But I guess, from my point of view, the question becomes, the one that's in the academy, that is not positive. That's based on what happens in the academy, is that not right? Or is that,
What do you mean?
the one that's in the academy now?
Unless something major happens, that person
Oh,
will
sure.
graduate and will...
And will be hired?
No, is already hired.
Is already
Yeah.
hired, okay.
Hire
Okay.
before they go.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now, the other one that you're talking about, you said that it's almost positive, or,
I'm saying that Friday, he has his polygraph, which is the last thing. If he passes the polygraph, we're gonna bring him in front of you to hire him.
We can't say
Okay.
that's positive or negative, that's
That-
is what
Right.
we're gonna tell them.
but based on that
Based
polygraph,
upon Friday, by Friday noontime, if he passes, then it's give him a starting date.
so that would bring us up to 25.
24.
24.
One in the academy is already counted in the 23.
Oh, is already counted in
He is
the
an
23, I'm
employee.
sorry.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought he wasn't in the, that's
No, he's an
right.
employee already.
Okay, so that would bring us up to 20.
He's already on the road because he's just getting his New Hampshire
Yeah,
certification. He's already a certified officer.
It does have an impact as far as we did have some certified people come through the interview.
Yeah, I know it does.
And one of them that we looked at and was rated very high has quite a few number of years on. The problem with that then is that we have the matrix to bring them in laterally, and that's going to be a lot more expensive than a brand new officer. So based upon what you're looking financially, I would say we have to hire an uncertified person.
It'd be the only department I know that would turn down somebody with higher qualifications.
But if I can, the reality is, until May, I wouldn't want to, even though we have the money in the current budget we're in, go above where the numbers coming from the committee are at currently,
Absolutely.
because then you're gonna be sitting with a certain body, and you're gonna have to go back into all the other lines, and if you find that you have to cut those down so much that you can't operate, then you're gonna go into a layoff, so you will have just brought somebody on, and within a matter of weeks, be laying them off. It's like buying something before you know you have the money in the bank to buy it.
I understand where that is, but if we always shy away from hiring someone because we don't think we're gonna get it, I guess we're never gonna get it because no one's ever gonna see that we need the money. So I don't know, it's
Well,
6.5
right.
of one and half a dozen of
I
the
guess it
other.
depends on if you think that by filling more, I mean, you could fill from that theory, you could fill
I'm
before.
not saying
no.
filling to that 27, but I guess I'm basing it on the argument or the discussion that we have so often, that we feel that this community, and the statement was made by us, that we feel that this community, in order to ensure the safety of its residents, that we needed a certain amount. And now what I'm saying is, it sounds like we're backing away from that because we're not so sure what the amount's going to be.
I think you have to, though.
But what happens is, because you back away from it, you don't hire that, so you don't spend that, so then they say, well, you haven't spent that, so you don't need that, you know,
This
it's,
is the only year that's happened.
Right, but I understand what you're saying, but that might.
I don't know, but I'm just saying, that's the way it's looking like the discussion is
Right, well,
going.
you're correct, and if I can, let's just say you hired one more or two more. Is the argument then going to be to the committees, you have to give us more back into our budget because we've got bodies sitting there?
I'm not saying, but I mean, you know, we were the ones that made the statement saying this is what we need, you
Right.
know. I'm just saying that, you know,
How do you want to pay for them? Knowing
Right,
what
that's the
we've been
bottom line.
handed right now. You have to fund them. What do you want to do?
Where
We
are you
can
gonna get
hire,
the money?
I'm with you, we should hire up to 27. But how do you want to pay for them? What do you want to eliminate?
and that's what
And that's the magic word, is eliminate.
Okay.
Not $1,000 from this, not $200 from blankets, not, you know,
well, that's why
$500 from food. I mean,
That's why I
what do you
picked
want to
on,
eliminate?
that's why I picked on that big one of vehicle maintenance.
Okay, that still funds one person, so we want to
Okay.
take more out of
But I guess what
overtime?
I'm saying is,
Maybe we
do
don't pay
we-
FICA. I mean, there's a good one, I can fund 2 people with FICA.
Reduction in income.
It's already been put on the table. You know, everybody's so worried about what was put on the table for raises, and I understand that. You also realize that those are over 5 years. And it was set up by unanimous vote of this board, after research was done, to get it up to par with departments surrounding us of same size and likeness. So
it was unanimous, however, I'll tell you this, Dave, I did not know that you gave that increase earlier in the year, and that was never said to me.
But
But, okay, go but.
had that not been given, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that. Had that not been given, the raise would have been different. You did the research and got the figures from the other departments.
I got
Of
the
what-
figure from the
of what
LGC,
pays-
right.
From the LGC, but for other departments, of what the pays should have been for those positions, to keep a level of wanting a sergeant to go to be a lieutenant, wanting a lieutenant to become a captain.
I
That's how
gave
we
you-
based all that.
I gave you what the figures were.
Correct.
Okay, I gave you what the figures were, but, like I said, had I known that certainly would have played a part in my decision, because we did put those numbers into the budget, okay? And I don't know, but it seems to me that this is where the crux of the argument seems to be, is that this raise was given as of January 1st and not solely in next year's budget. That's where I see all the negative discussion coming from. But like I say, I did not know that. I don't know how we get around this. You don't have the figures for the overtime right now for this year.
No, wouldn't know. We have the next commission meeting coming up, we'll have Francine's latest.
And I would like, I guess, the overtime analyzed to the point of those people that are having to do overtime to meet the needs because of the lack of officers. And I would guess that most of it is that, is it not?
Well, it's also for people being in schools. and
Right, yeah, but I mean,
holidays and-
yes, but I mean, the
Ford is
majority.
always holiday too.
Right.
I mean, a holiday, overtime.
Ford is a holiday?
Yeah.
I never heard
You
it.
tell me.
I never
No,
heard it said that way.
I-
But I mean, you know what I'm saying? I would
Right,
like it
what-
sorted out so that we know what constitutes part of that overtime line, whether or not any of it, you know, is.
I don't think you can do that, can you? Can you break it down to what went to court?
You're gonna have to go back by every time slip on every week. It can be done, but it's gonna take a long time to do, because you've gotta go back and look at the schedule, who was originally scheduled, who ultimately worked. Was there overtime, and then if they worked overtime, was it for filling a shift, or was it also for staying, for the accident that happened at the end of the shift? I guess my question would be on that, are you looking to say, we truly need this much money for overtime?
I'm trying to substantiate, because we don't have the complement of officers, that we're spending a certain amount of overtime. And we've talked about this. This is not the first time. This is probably the third time that we talk about the overtime line is high because of a certain amount of lack of officers.
Sure.
I think we discussed that. And all I'm saying is, if you analyze that line and analyze those situations where you needed to put somebody in overtime to compensate for the loss of officers, you can develop an argument, okay? As opposed to saying this is just what the overtime is.
Well, you could look at the
I mean, I
You could
was
look
at
at
a
the
loss
overtime
to
as-
even respond the other night. I didn't have any response for it because I didn't really know.
you could look at the overtime.
Overtime
as-
is not overtime all, for everybody.
Right. You could look at the overtime amount that's been spent so far and roughly project that, but again, you're still,
That's all I want to know on what we've spent thus far,
right.
what we spent it on.
But again, my point though is, we can do that, but again, you can't, it's just like saying, we don't know what's gonna happen. If we have,
Well, none of us knows what's going to happen.
So I would say, going back week by week, schedule by schedule, officer by officer, it's gonna take weeks and weeks and weeks to analyze.
Where computerized?
Yeah, but you have to go back to what the schedule was and then what was actually worked. And figure out, did that person work it because that was an overtime shift? Why did they work that overtime? Was it to transport a prisoner? Was it for the burglary that happened? Were they filling in for somebody on vacation?
Joanne, question?
Yes, sure.
Steve, is the overtime high because the staff is low?
That's what we're spending right now.
That's part of it.
That's what part of it.
Okay, but if it's a significant part of it, in other words, you're running the better part of $250,000 in overtime costs.
Right.
Something else, there's a valid portion of that that says, okay, you do have vacations coverage, you do have holiday coverage, weekend coverage, that's gonna come to some dollar.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Right.
The rest has to do with fluctuation in staffing.
And that's what I've been getting at.
So if, let's say the fluctuation in staffing is $100,000, you can have 2 full-time officers for that money. That would be $50,000 per. That would bring.
But I don't think it's
that would
dollar
save
for
you-
dollar, Paul.
Pardon me?
Because I don't think it's dollar for dollar.
I don't think
It would be
is.
a shorter version because you need 5 to fill 7 days.
No, but if-
24/7. No, but hear me out. If you're correct, if it's $100,000 filling in because of short shifts, even if you got 2, that doesn't complement 24/7. You need 5 people to do that. So your reduction, you would have a reduction in overtime, but not $100,000 worth.
It's not dollar for dollar.
It's not dollar for
Those
dollar.
Those people you then hire.
I'm just saying, if you subtract out the monies you have to pay for vacation time, okay, the coverage that you have to pay OT for the guys that are on vacation, and for sick leave, obviously, and for those absolutes, okay, then the rest is the amount that you're expending totally because you're short-staffed.
No,
But you would still be
no,
short-staffed. Because you wouldn't be able to cover 7 days' worth.
No, but at least you'd be able to isolate the dollar.
Okay, now I know what you're saying. I
I
understand.
just want you to say, okay, we've done the homework, that this is the dollar.
I think it's an exercise well taken.
You know, it's an
I
exercise.
do too.
Yeah.
Are we capable of doing it in this short time period?
Shouldn't be that hard to figure out.
Get with we can get with Francine tomorrow. If you can
And
come in,
I'm
we'll-
sure
and look
that
at the numbers.
Christine is probably,
because I'm
Well,
not.
maybe, maybe the way she inputs it, maybe that would be the computerized thing to do it.
Yeah.
And that was all overtime.
Yeah.
None of my dispatch shifts have two people unless somebody calls in sick on a day shift, then I have a supervisor. Most of my sick calls are evenings and midnights, I have one person on.
But you would definitely be identifying money spent for overtime for sick time. Right? You would. You say that money was spent specifically for that.
Right, you gotta go
Okay.
back and recreate that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's not a 3 or 4 hour thing.
No,
You're talking-
well, no,
you're talking-
no,
You're
no.
talking a couple of days.
No,
here,
but
sit
it
down
is-
and go through all
Right.
that.
It is.
But I
doable.
think it's,
Oh, it's doable.
I think, not only do I think it's doable, I think it satisfies some of these arguments that have been made, because I think, and I'm not gonna say I understand totally where the budget committee was coming from, because I don't know, what they had in their mind, and I don't wanna prejudge anything. But the line was looked at, and I think the feeling was that the overtime line was too high based on the fact that we were not going to have as many officers, and therefore the overtime line was not required. And I guess what I'm saying is, if you break down that overtime line, you're going to be able to see different things. You're going to be able to see, as Paul said, those that are, picking up for somebody that's on vacation, picking up for somebody that's sick, picking up for, because somebody's gone to court, or picking up for somebody because we don't have the required. That's what it's going to tell you.
And more importantly, you'll be able to tell the budget committee exactly
Right.
the status of that, rather than, well, we really don't know.
Well, like I say, and that's probably where their dilemma was coming from. They were looking at the line and saw that the line is a fairly, large line, but how do you decipher what the line actually, is compiled of?
Then I think you need to come in and get with us and let us show you what we have for numbers and what the system is, to figure out if we can, in what time frame we can pull that information out of the documents we have, or if finance is going to have those documents.
Just going to say
in a
that
different
finance
format.
might be able to help.
Well, that's why I said that maybe Christine could help them.
Chief, if I know, if I can, it's gonna depend on shift assignments that were made. Not all your if you filled every shift the way it probably should be filled, or a full complement on some of the shifts that we didn't go full complement, would have been overtime. By the schedule being adjusted, you're not gonna see that.
You're
What
not
I'm
gonna see
saying
that
is,
we're
if we would have
running
ran 3
short.
guys and a sergeant on a midnight shift, or 3 on a midnight shift,
The
and
way
because
you
we're
would-
short, we do 2 on a midnight shift, you're seeing no overtime. Where if we staff to a certain level, there would be overtime based upon our numbers right now. So by moving the schedule and making adjustments in scheduling, the overtime has been kept down based upon the allotment. So you won't even see that aspect.
Well, I guess,
That's all, I just want to throw that out to you.
and I think that's a good explanation, that along with this report, that statements like that, which you just made, that be included in that report, okay?
Because if we would have had a full complement on midnight and somebody calls in sick, sometimes we don't fill it.
Okay. So, what do we want to do, given the fact? Do we want to go with those couple of things that we want to explore first before we make a decision, or? The public hearing, I believe, not the deliberative session, the hearing, I believe, is it Thursday night? Thursday night.
Next week.
No, this week.
This week, this Thursday. Which I know that won't be done, but like I said,
I think Chris would pass that.
What's that?
What, that's, I mean, if you can come in tomorrow morning and go with Francina and John, and we'll show you what we have for the documentation, and see if that's going to answer your question, or if finance has that information in a different format that will give you the answer you're looking for in a more efficient way and quicker. But you've got to see what we have, so you see what we're trying to explain verbally, you see the documents we have.
Well, getting back to Thursday's budget hearing. Do you have any suggestions, or do we just want to wait and see what comes out of the budget hearing, or do we want to respond?
I
And
think you want to respond. I
okay.
think we have to start there. I don't think this research is going for naught, but if it's not ready, you still have to go forward if you want to raise the complement of officers
Okay.
completely.
See? To raise it to the 20,
27. That's what we said we needed.
Should have some kind of a spreadsheet by Thursday's meeting, ideally. That, you know, so this is historically what's happened to the OT.
Yeah, that's the ultimate plan. I
Yeah.
think that's why Joanne's gonna spend her time in here tomorrow.
Less than 2 days to do it, it's a big order.
If you hear it last time, you get a cave action, that's it.
oh, okay.
Only if you're in a cell.
Yeah.
And do we want Les to, I think we got to contact, or is,
Paul's gonna get
Put a
back to you
clock to
tomorrow.
with regard to
Dale? Yeah.
Dale? Okay,
He said he'd get back to you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
okay. Okay, the issue about,
If I'm not mistaken,
merit
though, that's not
salary.
gonna eliminate that line. It just moves it. It moves it from us to highway. Just like it moves
and it
from
becomes a
highway.
chargeback.
Wait a minute, what I'm saying is, unless they can
Yes.
know it's gonna be cheaper, which I don't know how we could, it moves from one.
Should be cheaper.
Well, yeah, I guess the labor rate should be the exact difference, but it's still not a complete elimination of that line.
No, it's a price reduction.
It'll be eliminated in our budget, it'll just move to another budget, but it's still,
That doesn't help us gain officers back.
that's what I'm saying, let's not, get overzealous here, because that's 58,000, I believe, or 54,000.
40.
You're not gonna save that whole amount.
I
They
didn't
save
think
a
we were
good
going to
20.
save that whole
No, I
amount.
didn't say you did. What I'm saying is, well, you probably save a good 20, but, which is still significant.
Yeah.
Now, what do we want to do about the merit salary? The merit raise? The dollars that have been put aside for that? What happened, I believe, with regard to the police contract, that got voted down. Did the towns, non-union, well, they don't have union, did they get voted down too? Everybody's got voted down? On the school side got voted down too?
They came in at 0.
But did theirs get voted down?
They came in at 0.
It was
Came in at 0.
So
They
teacher's
gave it-
contract
we
was
gave-
recommended
we gave
at
it
0.
You came in at 0?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need that figure.
We need the
Exactly
figure
what it
for the 2% merit.
What I'd say is when you come in tomorrow, we'll just tell Francine, because she has all the spreadsheets, and we'll start pulling out the numbers you need.
And then the other one is the pay adjustment. What do we want to do with that one? Do we want to delay it?
It wouldn't be delaying it, it would be taking it back. You've already started it.
Is that the only two places that they're going?
Yeah, that's it. We're not gonna go line by line tonight. Harry's
Oh,
there
and
for
you're
that.
supposed to get back to us with regard to how much we spent in the union negotiations.
Right, well, again, we'll have to pull that Francine will have
Okay.
that, so.
Okay, the
That's going to
question,
have to be handled by email tomorrow, and the email is a legitimate vote. This is to be held as public record.
what's that?
We're not going to have a meeting again before Thursday.
With regard to these or this one?
All of them. And you can do an email vote, and the emails become public document. Am I correct?
No. I think you have to post a meeting before you can have a meeting. That takes
Is
some
email
days.
considered a meeting?
Yep, if I email both of you, that would be considered me doing it outside the preview of the public, and that's not right.
It's not a public meeting.
Is it quandary?
Unless what you do is, we work in the next 2 days to get as much information as we can of what you're talking about. The chair takes that to the budget committee Thursday night for their consideration of what the dollars are, or whatever information can be pulled together in the next 2 days, and ask that number, whatever that number has come to, be considered, and just also talk about the fact that what the, what the total staffing level may or may not be roughly.
So whatever you do between now and Thursday's meeting is basically homework. And whatever you present to the budget committee would be public information.
Right.
Right, so yeah, so there'd be no further discussion on it. That's just that's what the chair would do, like Paul said, bring the homework forward and.
All right.
Do we want to put the merit raises, we're going to put the merit raises in there? We're going to take them out, I should say?
I didn't say that.
I'm asking the question.
Which ones? This year's or last year's? Or next year's?
In next year's budget, because that's what
Next year's, right.
it was placed in the budget at 2%?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So you're going to get that
Yeah,
amount?
yeah, we need a total figure for that.
But are you agreeable to
Oh,
that?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the next one is the pay equity adjustment. Let's start off with, since that we're talking about that budget, we're talking about the 2010-2011 budget, that pay equity adjustment. Let's talk about that one first. Since
What do you want to talk about?
well, I'd like to know, what your feeling is, are you as a commissioner willing to take that out of the budget? Or you want to hold firm to leave it in the budget and suspend what started in January? What's your feeling?
Well, I believe Henry should be part of this, but he's not.
Let's start with the 2010-2011.
Well, I think it's all combined. 'Cause
Okay.
You can't do one
separate.
without the other.
Okay, go ahead.
Bad timing? Yeah. Justified? Yes. I think there was 4 meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, that we worked on this.
Mhm.
And the ultimate reason behind it was correct. I don't know, and I know that's not a good answer. I don't know.
And
I don't have a- I don't have a good answer.
I can appreciate that. I guess, and I've been thinking about this and I've been struggling with it. Based on the fact of what has come forward and what has not been recommended, or what is not going to be brought to the voters. When you use the term bad timing, I think it's probably right on, that it's a bad time to even consider something like that. Is it something that needs to be addressed? I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and maybe it's something that we have to work, you know, with, amongst ourselves, and work with, you know, whether or not it be the budget committee or the town council on this. I think it's something that probably needs more discussion, but I agree with you. Bad timing, it's a difficult time.
That being said, neither one of us have an answer at this point.
I guess as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to ask the chief this question. As the chief, and you are the leader of the department here, do you feel that's something that probably we should be doing?
I think you need to have a discussion with all the staff that you already adjusted, and just see what everybody's feelings are. I think everybody will agree that, and I think bottom line is everybody wants to be treated fair. And yeah, is it a bad time? Yeah, timing bad, probably. But I think that's a discussion you need to have with everybody that's involved in it.
It's going to be very difficult given where we are right now. Well, we're looking at the public hearing on, who'll be here tomorrow? I have a meeting tomorrow night, but,
I thought it was tomorrow we were spending with
yeah, I am, yeah.
John and Francine.
Those are my days, those are not my nights.
I'm sorry.
Is that what you want to do? You want to have a meeting?
I'm not going to be here. There's no doubt about it. I mean, my schedule's tough enough as
Yes,
it
it
is.
is. Okay. Well, we're kind of split here, I guess. Or you haven't really said. I'm not going to say.
We're kind of split because neither one of us has really said.
I guess what I did say is, as far as the budget is concerned, that I think that we need to probably take it out because it's bad timing, and perhaps work with both the council and the budget committee on this particular issue. As far as what has been put in place as of January, to suspend it. That's what I said.
You need a motion to remove it.
Right. But there's only two,
Yeah, we're well aware of that, Paul, thank you. We're also well aware of the bullying that was going on to get it removed when it's our decision, and I think it was made with, other than bad timing, there was a lot of research put into it.
I'm not saying that it's...
Hear me out, just don't interrupt.
I apologize.
We have people who've been here over 20 years, I believe in most of those positions. I think a meeting with them that are long-term people here, and let them help you with the decision. I'm not willing to lose people that have been here that long for a decision that was made well-researched. And I think there should be an input there. Those people have been in this community for a long time. They know what's going on. You might be surprised what you hear. Maybe you won't be. I don't know. I don't have that answer.
I'm
And
willing to listen to that. I guess the only other reason why I suggested working with the town and the budget committee is that I saw from the library's perspective, and perhaps Paul can fill you in, but I think there were some inequities with regard to the library, and the council helped them work with that.
Yep.
And that's why I'm suggesting that.
The only thing, you got a timing scenario.
Right, no, I don't.
It makes it difficult.
Right. That's the only reason why I'm suggesting that I became aware of that.
But I don't think you have the time for that. I think,
I mean, you could tell the budget committee Thursday night that that's the plan of the commission or of the chair to meet with the people, and that the commission has not decided, is considering, but has not decided yet whether you're going to suspend them. Whether that makes any difference or not, remains to be seen.
That's for the budget. That's for the budget for next year. Then
Right.
the question becomes about this year's, for the operating budget that we're in right
but
now.
that's part of it. It's all gonna be together. Not eliminating,
Well,
we're not eliminating, removing them. I'm not eliminating that. But I just ask that these staff be consulted. And I'm not asking for their permission. I want you,
Yeah, but who do you want to meet with them? Butch? And you're not available?
Henry's the finance guy, been doing it for 900 years. I'm not available during the day, I apologize, but there's nothing I can do about that. Henry, in this time of year, you might be hard pressed, but.
Well, I don't think it's too late right now to have one
It is for
scheduled
Thursday.
for tomorrow. Now, whether or not you can set something up for,
One of the staff members is away at school for 2 weeks right now in Rhode Island, so you have to meet with the rest of them left.
During the, got a cell phone? So it's not impossible. Because I think it's a one-on-one thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's a group tag team
Well,
operation. I think you can do the one that's away with 15 minutes on a cell phone.
Right, but I think one of the things you want to think about is, and maybe you can ask the budget committee Thursday night, the question: if the commission was to vote to rescind the wage adjustments, will the budget committee consider putting money back in that cut officers? It doesn't really cut our ability to field officers for the community. If the answer is no, then
Correct.
then
Then you can't afford to lose the ones we have either. John, could you get me, or not me, but for that statement, you're looking at funding for 4, 3, 4?
to fill the ones we have to fill.
The ones we asked for from where we figured we'd be. We said we could probably squeeze 24, so we need funding for 3. Middle of the road type base, what we're looking for salary back. And I'm saying middle of the road is, kind of compensates for more experience, less experience. And I don't know what you have in the pipeline, so you might want to use the one that's almost at the end, you might want to use that too, to figure that where he'd come in and then go from there. That would at least give you a figure.
right.
You
So,
can't just
but
say,
I
you can't just go in and say, I want money back for 3 people. It's just, what is that figure? And I know it's an arbitrary figure, but if we're a couple $1,000s short, we can deal with that. If we're $50,000 short, it's going to be a little hard.
we're too far. Now, this plus the merit, this is the pay equity adjustment, but also the merit too, that you want me to speak to them about?
The merits are definite. You have that answer
We already
Thursday.
took the merit out.
The other one is the question
Yeah.
about the equity.
Yeah,
The merit's got to go to 0. And the only reason we put it in at 2 is because that's what the town was doing.
At the time when the budget was
Correct.
Okay,
All right.
okay. I think we beat the
Beat
new
that horse
business,
dead.
everything on the proposed 2010-11 budget. The next item under new business is the requested meeting of the town council. We did get what the letter said.
Continuing, I won't be here.
Okay. I don't know if they'll reschedule or whatever, but since you're not able to be there, they had requested all 3 members to be in attendance. So I will have to get back to them,
That's
okay?
fine.
Okay?
No problem with
And I'll have Francine get back to that, whether or not it's rolling on. Other business, is there any other? Okay, we're back to public input. Yes.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but after listening to the meeting, I am. On pay equity adjustments, the chief's raise, the captains and the lieutenants, I think you're missing one key component here that I just don't think you're getting. This was done in non-public. We had to get a right to know request through the town hall to figure out what the amounts were. They wouldn't even tell us here. It didn't go through the process. It didn't go through the town council. It didn't go through the budget process. And most importantly, it didn't go to the voters. The voters never approved this. Now you want to talk to the employees about what they want to do. How about the voters? When do they have a say in this? Because they really should. And I think that's what people are mad about this, and that's the reason why. It's horrible timing to be doing anything like this. And it's unbelievable that you wouldn't even ask the voters, that you would still think that that's okay. It's not okay.
Sure. I guess partially you're right, it should have been put in the budget. It is we have the right to do what we did, and it's discussed in non-public because you're using names, because there was specific reasons and determinations done in that, correct?
Well, what happened, it came through as a memo from
Correct.
specific.
From somebody. But, you know, we talk about putting stuff to the voters. I mentioned the ambulance before. Do you remember when the warrant article was voted down and we couldn't get it? 3 months later, a new ambulance showed up, sorry, rescue truck. Now we got a second one. Has that been put to the voters? I'm asking the legit, I'm not trying to be...
It wasn't my decision.
But I understand.
But this is.
Well, no, this isn't your decision either.
No, this is your decision.
That's correct. But what I'm saying is, everybody seems to think we didn't bring it forward. We didn't bring that transport van forward. There's more than that goes on, and it's not just us. And I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you to a point. And the reason I said to bring it, let's see what some of the, I didn't say whatever they answer is the final decision, but I think people that have been around for 20 years should have a decision, or at least a say, seeing it was brought to us by them. Or at least one of them, I should say.
I don't say say, I say they can be heard. But,
okay, that's a better word for it.
And I think the voters have a right to be heard too. And you took them right out of the equation, and I don't think that's acceptable. That's the problem I have with all of this. And would it have hurt to wait another 6 months and have it go on the ballot? I don't think so.
When we were on the ballot, it wouldn't say anything about raises. We came in under requests.
Sure, not sure.
Back and forth.
I mean, you.
But I'm done. What I'm saying is, we've been listening to. I'm just trying to say. I'm trying to get out the side from here, the thing that everybody seems to be hiding from. And not everything coming out is adequate. That's all I'm saying. You're right. And bad decision. I'm not.
I think people would have had a better understanding, or at least wouldn't have been so upset if at least they had a say in it, if at least it came to the voters. And I think that's where you went horribly wrong. I don't even agree with the timing, but I think at least if it went to the voters, people would have been so upset. I keep hearing the chief talking this year that he has funding for 27 officers, and I've corrected him, my husband's corrected him, and he's still saying it. Are you aware that with the cuts that are made by the Budget Committee, that you have funding for 25 officers?
That's what was said the other night, that
Right.
25 officers at 70,000. That's what,
No, that's not what was said the other night.
it's right in the minutes, I went to the minutes today.
What was taken out was 70,000 for the funding. That's not what was left in. My point is that you have higher paid officials in the police department, that the funding is still there. The point is you had 2 sergeants just leave. Are they still in the budget? Is that amount still in the budget? Or when they leave, do you put in funding for 70,000 as a new officer? Or do you put in funding for a middle of the road?
See, I can't answer, that's a question.
So you're acting like there's doom and gloom here, and you can't, and you've got 23, geez, can we hire 24? You have funding for 25. So what's the problem? What's your average? You know, you keep talking about how we need to get up to 27. You've always needed to get up to 27 or 28 or 29. The real problem here is that you never are able to do that. You can never keep a full complement. And I've talked to you about morale and about other issues within the department. And that's your real issue. That's your real problem here, not your funding. Because we could fund for 40, but you'll never have 40 because you can't keep them.
Well, that's totally unrealistic to say.
But you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I understand what you're saying.
It's just frustrating to hear this. And I think, too, you're assuming you're not going to lose anymore, where last year you lost 10. So and that's employee